Hello, good morning. I welcome you all on this Thursday morning to this very interesting discussion on global methane initiative with the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. So again, welcome. This webinar is a part of the ADB Circular Economy Working Group webinar series. This webinar series showcases various tech solutions, new approaches, emerging methods and case studies, and so we are very excited to have you all in this seminar series today. So just to briefly describe the circular economy working group, the circular economy working group at ADB, was set up to bring together the community within ADB and outside to effectively deal with the solutions around circularizing innovations for development. So as a part of this, the circular economy knowledge sharing and capacity building program has been launched, and it's a planned series of events to raise awareness and develop capacity for implementing solutions. So we are very happy to have all of you here as a part of this continuing set of webinars. So today we are very happy to have Nick Elgar, and he's going to be talking about the global methane initiative that US EPA has been undertaking. And given the need for ADB to align its activities with the Paris Agreement, and methane being one of the significant non-CO2 GHG gases, this becomes all the more important. A number of our projects across ADB have to deal with methane, from rice production to biogas to other waste-related projects. So this is very timely, and I really appreciate Nick's time for this. To briefly introduce Nick, Nick is the program manager for EPA's ActStar program, and he serves as the co-chair to the Global Methane Initiative Biogas Subcommittee. So in his role, Nick works with the US livestock industry, very relevant to ADB, state and federal agencies and biogas industry stakeholders to advance the deployment of methane recovery projects. While supporting the Global Methane Initiative, he helps advance anaerobic digestion of organic feedstocks globally for methane mitigation and energy production. As a background, I think Nick graduated from the University of Minnesota, correct me if I'm wrong, Nick, where he received his Bachelor of Science in Environmental Sciences, Policy and Management, and is currently a Master of Business candidate at the George Washington University. So we have a great opportunity to learn from him, and I welcome Nick to present his thoughts on this very important aspect. Over to you, Nick.
All right, thank you, Nevin, and thank you to everyone that's joined today and to ADB Circular Economy Working Group. It's really great to be here, and really looking forward to a discussion today on measuring and mitigating methane emissions from agriculture, municipal solid waste, and wastewater, and the intersection with circular economy and how there's a number of opportunities to advance methane mitigation in the circular economy. I want to start with just an introduction to the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, or EPA, and our work to mitigate methane in support of the Global Methane Initiative and the biogas sector specifically. And then dive deep into some of our resources and tools that can be useful for practitioners to measure and mitigate methane, and share some opportunities for and ideas for opportunities for collaboration with ADB and partners. And we have plenty of time for question and answer, and look forward to having a lively discussion at the end. So just to give a little bit of overview of the Global Methane Initiative, or GMI for short. GMI is an international public-private partnership. There are 46 countries that are members of GMI, and over 700 project network members, which include private industry, companies, non-governmental organizations, universities, and other partners that are all working collectively to help mitigate methane emissions. And the United States is a founding member of GMI, and the United States provides in-kind support to help countries through the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, provide technical support to countries and project network members to help deploy methane to energy projects. And GMI is really has a library of resources that the US EPA helps develop and maintain for country members and project network members. And GMI really focuses on three major sectors: biogas, which includes agriculture, municipal solid waste, and wastewater. We also do work to support the oil and gas sector and coal mine methane. And biogas sector, which I mentioned, includes the manure management sector, municipal solid waste, and wastewater sector, is a huge source of methane emissions globally and is projected to be so into the future as well too. Estimates of over 20% of man-made methane emissions are from sources of biogas, the biogas sector. And countries are beginning to take action on methane and biogas specifically, including biogas strategies in national planning and NDCs. But there's definitely a lot more work to be done in this area for addressing this important source of methane emissions. And one sort of guiding target that countries are working towards is many countries are working towards is the Global Methane Pledge. This was a pledge that was launched in 2021, last year, that now over 120 countries have signed on to. And the pledge aims to reduce global methane emissions by 30% by 2030. So that means we have a little less than 8 years to reach that goal, which is a monumental and ambitious target. And the Global Methane Initiative and US EPA and our partners are really aiming to support those ambitious claims or goals and to help countries reach those objectives. So just to take a step back and set the context for what I mean when I talk about biogas projects. Really, I mean two main technologies: anaerobic digesters and landfill gas capture systems. And these two biogas types of systems can help mitigate methane from manure management, waste and wastewater by capturing methane that would have otherwise been lost to the atmosphere. There are other ways to mitigate methane and best practices for reducing methane from organic waste, starting with organics diversion. So diverting organic waste from landfills to composting facilities, to anaerobic digesters, for animal feed or other uses. And those other types of practices really mitigate methane before it's even produced. And so the Global Methane Initiative, US EPA have a number of tools and resources, which I'll talk about today, that can help support these practices. And one technology that is really that we really advocate for as a solution is anaerobic digestion. And this graphic here kind of demonstrates how anaerobic digestion works. And really, any organic feedstock or waste can be utilized in an anaerobic digester, whether it's livestock manure, wastewater, biosolids, food waste, or other agricultural residues, can be combined or used individually in an anaerobic digester. And really, two products can be produced: biogas and digestate. And that biogas can be a source of energy in the form of electricity or heat or vehicle fuel, or can be actually turned in some instances into a plastic product. There's a few companies in the US that are taking biogas and turning it into plastics. And then digestate, which is a nutrient-rich product that can be used as an organic fertilizer, can be used for crop irrigation, animal bedding. So there's a number of benefits that can come from anaerobic digester systems. And so what I really want to focus on for the bulk of our discussion today is on tools and resources that US EPA and GMI have for measuring and mitigating methane emissions and to support those biogas projects. So really all the tools that I'll be talking about today are kind of housed under this biogas toolkit that we've developed. It's a central location on our website. You can access it from the Global Methane Initiative website or the EPA website. But it's really a library of tools and resources that can help facilitate the development of biogas projects and useful resources to measure and mitigate methane emissions from the organic waste sector. And it really can be used as a roadmap for planning and implementing these methane mitigation projects and to quantify both the economic and environmental impacts of these types of projects. And it's really useful for all knowledge levels, whether you're just getting started in trying to understand, is a biogas project right for my city, for my farm, for my community, to I have a biogas project, I need some help operating it, or I want to expand more systems. So there's best practices for wherever you're at in your process. So diving into some of the resources, starting with some of the financial readiness resources, which I think might be most interesting to ADB folks. So this first resource is a municipal solid waste financial readiness questionnaire. And this resource really provides a set of questions to help cities assess their readiness for financing. Globally, there's, as I mentioned, there are these massive targets to mitigate methane, 30% by 2030. And one of the biggest challenges globally is how can financing that's available reach these projects that can be built? And this questionnaire is useful for cities to help prepare them to receive funding to build these types of methane mitigation projects. It helps explore the political environment to make legal frameworks and regulatory environments, what types of revenue streams can come from these types of projects, to really help prepare cities to receive that funding and put it to use most beneficially for these projects. Another really useful resource is the risk analysis and technical review checklist for biogas projects. This is really a guide for assessing the technical and financial viability of a biogas project. And it can be useful for both project developers to create a more complete project so that it addresses all the best practices for a system. But it can also be useful for government agencies or financial institutions to review those projects that are seeking financing, to ensure that the projects that are proposed, really check the box technically and financially, so that they're more sound projects. And within there's 37 best practices, which we use in the US, actually, this checklist when we review biogas projects that are seeking federal financing. A number of tools that I want to dive a little bit into next are project evaluation tools. And starting with the solid waste emissions estimation tool, or SWEET. SWEET is an Excel-based tool, and it really helps to quantify emissions from the waste sector. It looks at black methane, black carbon, particulate matter, and other pollutants. And it can be really useful for cities in their planning of sustainable waste management systems. Municipalities can use it to help create greenhouse gas inventories, establish emissions baselines for their situation. It can help compare different options, whether you're looking at, it looks at composting, anaerobic digestion, organics diversion, and it can be useful to help for waste management officials to justify the investment into these types of sustainable waste management systems, and really can be used to quantify public health impacts of these different waste management options. And it's being used already around the world. It's already been used in over 50 cities to date. A number of institutions around the world, such as the International Solid Waste Association, UN Habitat's Waste Wise Cities, and the World Health Organizations, to help them plan sustainable waste management solutions for cities. This is just one example of it being used by the World Health Organization in Accra, Ghana. In this city, they were evaluating more sustainable options to manage waste, and using the suite tool and their AirPlus software in tandem, they were able to estimate that the air pollutant emission benefits of this would help avert 120 premature deaths by 2030. So it really can be a tool to help quantify the benefits of these systems for cities. One theme that you're going to see across many of these tools is that they require very few inputs. We tried to make them as easy as possible to be used by many people around the world. Excel, Microsoft Excel, very easily transferable tool to use. And so there's very few inputs that are needed, but there's a lot of very powerful outputs that can come from these tools. And there's a lot of background methodologies and equations that are used to power these tools. So all that's to say is these types of tools are user-friendly. Next tool I want to dive into is the anaerobic digester screening tool. This again is an Excel-based tool that helps assess the potential feasibility of an anaerobic digester project. So this really looks at how much biogas can be produced, what the biogas can be used for, and the economics of that type of system. And it's useful for project developers, lending institutions to evaluate projects, a number of uses. Again, this tool can be used to estimate how much biogas can be produced and digestate can be produced from hundreds of feedstocks, or any feedstock that you can use, really. It has options to select manures, segregated waste, different types of feedstocks. No matter what type of organic feedstock you have, you're able to select that in the tool. And it can also evaluate the end uses of that biogas, such as electricity, renewable natural gas, cooking gas, and estimate emission reductions from a anaerobic digester system. So financial institutions and lenders can really use this to assess the project viability and risks of a project. Again, requires very few inputs, but can produce very powerful outputs, such as and some of the ones that I mentioned just the slide ago. The next tool is the Organics Economics tool, or Organics for short. And this tool is basically a 2-for-1. There's an organic economics tool to evaluate anaerobic digesters, and another one to evaluate composting facilities. And really what these tools are useful for is to evaluate the economic feasibility of anaerobic digesters or composting facilities. Really, you're able to estimate the optimal financial management of an organics waste management project. It can estimate net present value, internal rate of return, what types of revenues can be received. And it's really a financial tool to evaluate these types of systems. Again, very few inputs, but can estimate the capital investment costs, operation and maintenance costs of these systems, total revenues, sales. So it's a really powerful tool to evaluate the economic factors of a project. An example of the organics tool it was used in Novi Sad, Serbia. They were evaluating potentially expanding their current composting facility. So the organics tool was used to evaluate a few different scenarios for Novi Sad, expanding it to accommodate more green waste and garden waste, and green waste and potentially food waste. So it was able to run a few different models and produce some estimates for what would be an economically feasible project and what the outcomes would be for these different scenario options. So really useful for them, and they're now, Novi Sad is planning on expanding to accommodate food waste, and this organics tool was really useful in that feasibility study. And the last tool that I want to mention is the landfill gas screening tool. So, globally, open dump sites, landfills that aren't managed properly are, happening around the world. And this tool is really helpful to evaluate if a landfill gas capture system is appropriate for the situation. So it can help estimate recovery rate of landfill gas and help scope the different type of project and size of a landfill gas project that could be used. Again, it can estimate how much gas can be produced. If a landfill is appropriate, if the landfill, the current landfill that you're exploring is a good candidate for a landfill gas capture system, and then again, what type of project would be most feasible. Again, some of the inputs and outputs, very, very easy to use tool. And this slide here kind of is a summary of those 4 different tools. And I won't go through these examples in depth, but I think the main takeaway from this slide is these tools are meant to be used and can be used in tandem. Some can be used together. For example, the anaerobic digester screening tool can be used alongside the organics tool to evaluate both the economic and technical feasibility of a digester project. And there's a number of other combinations that these tools can be useful for. US EPA and GMI also have a number of resources on measurement, reporting, and verification, which is going to be critically important for tracking countries' progress in meeting our global greenhouse gas emission reduction goals. One of the most recent resources that was developed was a MRV handbook for biogas projects. And this really provides some of the guiding principles for conducting MRV for the biogas sector. And it really is useful for decision makers, both at the project level to quantify emissions and the most effectively, but even useful for at the national level to help governments quantify biogas projects and incorporate those different biogas projects into their national inventories so that they can report out on progress made at a national level. Best practices in this handbook, again, are geared and focused on the agriculture, municipal solid waste, and wastewater sectors. And the guidance that is included in this document is really from existing protocols and resources from IPCC, US EPA, California Air Resources Board, and knowledge from industry and global experts. GMI also has an MRV resources center that dives a little bit deeper into some of the benefits of MRV and inventories and why it's useful for enhancing targets in NDCs, and a number of best practices for using the MRV systems. And these last couple slides are just some ideas that, ideas for potential areas for collaboration with the Global Methane Initiative and partners at ADB and around the world. I talked today at length about a number of the resources that GMI and EPA have for helping to accelerate the adoption and implementation of these projects. One of the things that we do is we share these types of resources and how to use them through workshops, trainings, and outreach. So, and developing best practices guide and offering technical assistance to cities and countries to and projects to help accelerate the adoption of these projects. We also work with countries to analyze and provide support on policies, looking at existing policies and initiatives and identifying opportunities for improvements and improvements in inventorying and greenhouse gas emissions, MRV. We also work a lot with stakeholders to identify their priorities and help them develop work plans. We worked a lot for example, in India, and worked with the city of East Delhi to develop a work plan for mitigating short-lived climate pollutants in the waste sector, and including, circular economy benefits in their strategies, and just generally providing technical support, both to identify and evaluate biogas projects, support feasibility and analyses of these types of systems, and to help build capacity in other organizations to advance these projects. So that's my slides. And so I just want to thank you all for your time today, and I'm happy to answer any questions and have a discussion about anything today. So thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Nick. I think very informative and very timely set of tools that you have shown us today, and I'm sure there's quite a few questions on this. So I think we can start with the questions. I have quite a few from my own needs, I think, but I will start with the participants. So the first question is, are the tools being widely used by GMI developing country members in Asia and Pacific? And are they finding the tools useful in establishing baselines and project conceptualization, feasibility studies, policy development, monitoring their NDCs, etc.? That's the first question that you have.
That's a wonderful question. I mentioned some examples of the tools in use, and, part of my job is to help share these tools with governments and organizations to use them. One thing that we could probably be better at is tracking who is using these tools. We know that they're being used by a number of countries that we've engaged with, but to what extent, I'm not sure. So that's definitely an area where I would love to work with ADB and partners to help share these tools and ensure they can be useful. We certainly, if it's useful to translate them into other languages, that's something we're beginning to explore. These are, for the most part, in English and Spanish right now, but certainly could be translated to other languages if that makes them more accessible as well.
Great, thank you. So I think I have a question on this. So rural biogas and waste to energy, it's an attractive option for many of ADB's projects, right? But there seems to be certain sense of uncertainty if that option is the best way going forward in terms of Paris alignment, and is that the best way to deal with rural waste? So what is US EPA's take on this, especially given that the global methane initiative is the waste to energy biogas actively promoted as the best way to deal with rural waste, or is it something that is just to mitigate what's already happening? So what is the take on that aspect?
Yeah, thanks. That's a really good question. The US EPA's take on biogas projects, anaerobic digesters are, they're one tool in the toolbox to help manage manure and organic waste more sustainably. There's a number of benefits, as I talked about, both environmental, the climate benefits, air quality benefits, soil health, water benefits. They can produce energy, which can produce income for folks, and in rural communities, in Asia. I spent some time in Nepal. I've seen firsthand how these systems can, improve indoor air quality and reduce the time spent collecting firewood. And so there's a number of benefits to them. They're not the only solution, though. There are other practices that can help mitigate methane and manage these wastes sustainably. Composting is one. There are others, but this is one that has multiple benefits. And the technology, at this point is well understood, and it's commercially available. It is costly though. These systems, they can cost money, and it takes capital to get them up and running.
Yeah.
But in many cases, especially at the larger scale, they can pay for themselves, and their governments around the world are, including the US, are providing incentives, and there's a market available right now to make these systems financially available or viable.
Yeah. So I think we have quite a few questions now coming up. So I think another question that we see is, are there any tools for estimating, similar tools for estimating emissions from agriculture practices from Nilofer?
I'm sorry, agricultural practices from?
Yeah, are there any similar tools for estimating emissions from agriculture practices, like rice, production?
Sure. So Global Methane Initiative, EPA, these tools are really focused on, mitigating methane from livestock manure in the agriculture sector, livestock manure and agricultural residues. So these are mostly focused on, that we have to offer. I am, I'm sure there are others out there for other practices. Other organizations are focused, like you said at the start, on rice paddies and other things. I'm just not as well aware of those other practices.
Great. So we have another question from Garrett Kilroy. So he asks, are the waste streams in Asia and Pacific of sufficient quality and quantity to use this biogas and landfill technologies, or do we need to do upstream work before these technologies can be deployed? So is the quality and quantity of waste a key criteria, and some upstream work needs to be done before this can be deployed? Any thoughts on that would be helpful.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question, and it's really situation dependent. So it depends on the waste stream. So biogas systems, composting, these types of systems work best when there's not contaminants in the waste. When I mean contaminants, I mean like plastics and trash in the waste, that can gum up the system. And the benefit of digesters and composting is that what comes out the back end, not only is there energy from the digester, but there's the digestate, and the composting as well too is can be reapplied to the soil to recycle the nutrients. If there's garbage and contamination in it, that's a big issue for a lot of folks, and it's not good for the soil. So there is a need, definitely, if it's from like household food collection. A lot of times there needs to be some pre-processing of that organic waste stream to get out those contaminants. Another big challenge I know in India and Southeast Asia is paddy straw. At certain times of year that's burned, in a few weeks span, and has massive air quality impacts on, local communities. And there are a few companies that I know of, or at least one company I'm aware of in India, that is treating that paddy straw in an anaerobic digester and creating energy from it. So, I think there's a lot of times those types of agricultural systems work best when animal manure and organic residues are combined and used together. So I think it just depends on the source of the feedstock and the type of feedstock. But that's a great question. And if you're looking at a specific project and have more questions on that, there's a lot of resources in the biogas toolkit that can help answer some of those questions for you.
Thanks, Nick. I think another question for you is from Keshan Samarasinghe, and he asks, could you please let us know about the outcomes or findings of the pre-feasibility which was carried out in the biogas-powered cold storage in India?
Thanks. Yeah, that's a good question. I might have glossed over that a little bit in my presentation. I also presented on that a few weeks ago. But GMI, US EPA, we worked with some partners in India to look at could a biogas system be used to power cold storage in rural communities in India? And we used the anaerobic digester screening tool and the organic economics tool to help do a pre-feasibility of this in a community. So we looked at the different feedstocks that were available in these communities, talked with local producers and farmers, and asked them what they'd be willing to pay for this type of system to store their fruits and vegetables in a cold storage unit. And from that initial feasibility study, we found that it did show promising positive economic feasibility. That study is available on the Global Methane Initiative website, and I'd be happy to share that with you. But that's a real great example of circular economy and how biogas and circular economy can kind of come together. Cold storage units, can be incredibly impactful to reduce food loss and waste. And in these rural communities around the world, there's feedstock available in the form of manure and food waste that could potentially be used to power those types of cold storage units. So a really promising study, and looking forward to working in India to help see that project through to a pilot project.
Yeah. So I will try to summarize another quote or comment from Anil Dhusa. And I think what he is specifically asking is, how do we go about providing guidance to the target groups to deploy these toolkits and solutions and use them for making financially attractive and support decision making? So is anything being done by EPA and with other organizations to you make this outreach with these tools, right, and make them more useful?
That's a great question, Anil. Thanks for that. And part of a big reason why I'm here today is to share these with ADB and your network, and want to continue to do that. And I think it's maybe I'll pass it back to you and others on the phone if there's thoughts on ways that we can work with ADB partners to share these tools. Certainly I'm open to that and welcome those opportunities.
Yeah, great. One question from me, and I think that's on that. So in these toolkits, how do we, is the costing variations between countries, are these already like populated? How do we consider impact of environmental variables like temperature, precipitation, because these things vary from region to region, right? And
Yep.
How do we consider them, especially for landfill gas capturing, because that has an open exposure to the atmosphere. So how do we do that? Is it already there, or is it again requires some upstream work before we can use the tools?
Yeah, no, absolutely. The great thing about these tools is, as I mentioned, they're really powerful. There's a lot of background kind of calculations that are done. But a lot of those kind of calculations can be adjusted by the user to make the tool more useful for country specific situations, whether it's, looking at the temperature variation or the unique situation of a city and their waste management situation, the types of feedstocks. There's all these different variables can be edited by the user and tailored to specific situations. So they're designed to accommodate for that variability. And certainly, as your partners and folks start to use these tools, we have available resources, and we basically have a hotline that can help folks answer questions. And we really want to be a resource to help people use these tools. So if folks are using them and have questions or have some troubleshooting issues, we're here to be able to offer that assistance as well.
Yeah. So I think we have another question from Stefan Rao. So let me try to summarize that. He says the question is a little outside of the main topic and more related to energy. You mentioned that in US coal bed methane extraction and use is supported activity in the US. Is that on the condition of discontinued coal mines, or also to extract from the still remaining active underground coal mines as they would make? Maybe I ask Stefan to ask this question because it's quite lengthy. Stefan, you want to ask quickly ask the question so that I don't miss any key points.
I tried to make it as clear as possible. Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much, Nick. Very, very, very impressive tools, very useful for all of us for our work here. You mentioned that coal-bed methane extraction and whatever, maybe liquefaction into natural gas is an activity that you support in the US. We have a case now in China where we're considering where our clients ask us to if we can support something like that. And in our case, it's actually for discontinued coal mines.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm also generally, I mean, my understanding, I'm not an energy expert. My understanding is that you can do it for discontinued coal mines and also for still active coal mines, which would make the mining safer because you're extracting the gas, so there's no explosion, no risk of explosion to the miners. Of course, we want to stop all the activities related to coal, but there may still be a few remaining mines. So I'm curious, what is the EPA's view, and generally what is because Paris alignment in ADB, there's some guidance, but I'm really curious what you guys think about that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's a really good question. And we have a program, well, through the Global Methane Initiative, EPA provides support to other countries that are interested in mitigating methane from existing coal mines. So we have a team of experts here that do that both in the US. We have a coal bed methane outreach program that works with coal mines in the US to capture and utilize methane from existing shut down mines and to help other countries as well too. So Stefan, I would love to follow up with you. I can connect you with the expert in the US EPA that helps run those efforts. And I think they would be more than happy to offer their insights and assistance.
Great. Thanks, Stefan. I think I couldn't do justice. You put it nicely. Thanks for stepping in. So I think looks like that's all the questions we have. Of course, if there are any other questions that come up later, Nick, we would send it to you by email and request your support. I also think there's a lot of opportunity to collaborate, especially on training ourselves to use tools like this. And this is very timely, and really appreciate your time today. And also thank all the members of the Circular Economy Working Group for making it happen, especially our staff. So really appreciate this. So looks like we have no more questions. So with that's the case, again, thanks again, Nick, and I will close the session for today. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and look forward to hearing from everyone. Feel free to reach out to me. I think my email may have been included in the webinar, but I'm happy to help in any way I can. And please, if you're interested in learning more about these tools, visit our website and join the Global Methane Initiative Project Network. It would be great to form more relationships with ADB and your members. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, everyone. Have a good day.